You wake up, and there is no clock, no alarm, no schedule, no job telling you where to be. The sun is coming up, the fire needs attention, someone is already hungry, and everything you need to survive today has to come from the world around you. So what exactly did ancient humans do all day? It is easy to imagine one answer: hunt. You picture a group of prehistoric humans chasing enormous animals across the landscape from sunrise to sunset. But hunting was only one part of life, and on many days, you might not hunt at all, because before you could go anywhere, there was already work waiting at camp. The fire that kept you warm overnight had to be maintained. Someone needed to gather wood. Tools had to be repaired. Hides needed scraping and preparing. Food from yesterday might need processing before it spoiled. And then there was water. You could not turn on a tap. Depending on where you lived, getting water might mean walking to a spring, river, or another reliable source, then somehow carrying enough back for the group. But food probably occupied a huge part of your attention, and most of it did not necessarily come from dramatic hunt. For many hunter-gatherer groups, gathering plant foods could provide an important and dependable part of the diet. That meant knowing the landscape in extraordinary detail. You had to know which plants were edible, which could make you sick, where roots were hidden underground, when certain fruits appeared, where nuts, seeds, shellfish, insect, honey, or other foods could be found. And that knowledge changed with every season. To you, a patch of ordinary-looking land might seem empty. To someone who had lived there their entire life, it could be a map filled with food. But what if the group did decide to hunt? Then the work could begin long before anyone threw a spear. You had to find animals first. That meant reading tracks, broken branches, droppings, disturbed ground, sounds, and movement across the landscape. You had to understand where animals drank, where they rested, and where they might move next. Sometimes, you could follow prey for hours and return with nothing. A failed hunt did not mean the day was over. It meant you had spent valuable energy and still needed food. And when a hunt succeeded, the work still was not finished. A large animal had to be processed. Meat had to be cut and carried. Useful fat had to be collected. Hide could be removed and prepared. Bones, sinew, and other materials could become tools, bindings, clothing, or parts of shelters. Getting an animal was one event. Turning it into everything your group needed could take much longer. And while some people searched for food, others had equally important work to do. Children had to be watched, and ancient camps probably had a lot of children. For most of human history, there were no schools, nurseries, or separate rooms where children disappeared for the day. Children lived inside the working world of adults. They watched, they copied, they played, and while doing that, they learned. A child might watch someone shape a stone tool hundreds of times before becoming good at it. They could learn which plants to touch, how to behave around fire, how to recognize tracks, and how to move safely through the landscape. There was no classroom. The entire day was the classroom, and making things was another enormous part of life. Imagine needing a knife. You cannot buy one. You have to make it. A carefully shaped stone tool could require skill built over years. Wooden tools had to be cut and shaped. Spears needed repairing. Animal hides required repeated scraping and working before becoming useful covering. Even something simple could represent hours of labor, and many objects eventually broke, so you made them again. But here's where the picture becomes more interesting. Ancient humans probably did not spend every waking second desperately working to survive. That image is too simple. Studies of recent hunter-gatherer societies suggest that subsistence work could sometimes occupy less of the day than people might expect, although ancient lifestyles varied enormously depending on climate, season, environment, and group, which means there was something ancient humans had that we rarely imagine them having: free time. So what did you do when the food was prepared, the tools were ready, and there was nothing urgent to fix? You did something extremely human. You spent time with other people. You talked, you played, you rested, you probably joked. People decorated objects and themselves. They made pigments. Much later in human prehistory, they created extraordinary paintings, carvings, beads, ornaments, and musical instruments. Somebody had enough time to make things that did not simply keep them alive. Think about that. A person sat down thousands of years ago and carefully carved something because they wanted it to exist, not because it would feed them, not because it would keep them warm, because it meant something. And then evening came. People returned to camp. Food could be shared and prepared. Tools might be worked on beside the fire. Children settled down, and people gathered together. We cannot know exactly what was said around most ancient fires, but imagine how important those hours could have been. This was where knowledge could move from one mind to another, where someone could explain where animals had been seen, where roots could be remembered, where children could hear stories, where relationships were built and arguments were settled. The fire did more than cook dinner. It created a place for people to be together after darkness made much of the outside world harder to use. Then, eventually, you slept, and when the sun came up, you did it again. Except no 2 days were exactly the same. Some days were spent moving camp, some searching for food, some repairing what had broken, some caring for children or injured people, some exploring unfamiliar ground. Some may have contained long stretches of waiting. Ancient life was not one endless hunt. It was hundreds of small tasks, decisions, conversations, skills, and relationships woven together. And that is probably the biggest difference between how you imagine an ancient person's day and what it may actually have felt like. To you, their life looks like survival. To them, it was simply life. life. So if you woke up tomorrow with no clock, no schedule, and no job telling you where to be, your day would not be empty. For most of human history, it never was.